The wallet fell out of his jacket pocket at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning in March, and the man who dropped it didn't notice. He was moving fast, the kind of fast that expensive shoes make on marble floors, the purposeful stride of someone whose morning was already full before it started. He had a phone to his ear and a coffee in his other hand, and the particular forward lean of someone who had not been fully present in a room for years, who moved through spaces the way a ship moves through water, displacing it, leaving a wake, never becoming part of it. The wallet hit the floor of the Meridian bus terminal with a flat slap. It was a good wallet. Dark brown leather, the kind that had been made to last, the kind that aged well. It had the worn smooth quality of something carried every day for years. It landed open, splayed on the terminal floor, and the contents were visible. Cash, a considerable amount of it, credit cards in their slots, a folded piece of paper, and a photograph pressed behind a plastic window. The man with the expensive shoes kept walking. His phone call filled his ear. His coffee steamed. He went through the doors and was gone. The wallet lay on the floor. 63 people walked past it in the next 4 minutes. Some of them didn't see it. Some of them saw it and kept walking. One man stopped, looked at it for 3 seconds, looked around, and kept walking. A woman in a business suit slowed, glanced at it, and then her phone rang and she accelerated again. The wallet lay on the floor of the Meridian bus terminal at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning in March, and nobody stopped. Then a girl crouched down and picked it up. Her name was Savannah Grace Tulane. She was 16 years old. She had dark blonde hair that she kept in a braid when she had the time and the elastic band for it, which she did today. She'd found a band on the floor of the women's bathroom at the YMCA where she sometimes showered, which she'd taken as a small gift from the morning. She had brown eyes and a face that had the quality of something weathered into clarity, the way river stones are clear and smooth, not worn down but refined. She was wearing a gray hoodie and jeans and boots that were good boots, waterproof, the one piece of equipment she'd spent real money on 8 months ago when she'd understood that her feet were non-negotiable. She was carrying a backpack that contained everything she owned that mattered, a change of clothes, a notebook with a pen clipped to its cover, her state ID, her mother's photograph, a library card, and approximately $14 in coins and small bills. She was homeless. Had been for 8 months, since the night she'd packed the backpack and left the apartment on Clement Street, and the man who was not her father but had been in her life since she was 12 and who had decided, in the accelerating deterioration of the past year, that she was something he was entitled to in ways she was not prepared to accept. She had not been back. She had not called the number on the card the social worker had given her, because the social worker had explained, with the careful transparency of someone legally obligated to be honest, that her options were a group home with 3 other teenagers or a foster placement that was currently available in a town 40 miles away, which meant a new school, which meant leaving the city she'd grown up in and the library she spent her afternoons in and the school where Ms. Hartley taught 11th grade English, and had told Savannah, 6 weeks before the 8 months began, that her writing was exceptional and that she should apply for a particular scholarship. Savannah had stayed. She'd made herself a life inside the parameters available to her, which were narrow and sometimes very cold and required a specific kind of daily management, where to sleep, where to eat, and where to be at what hour so as not to attract the wrong attention. She'd kept going to school, which was a logistics operation of the first order. She'd kept going to the library. She'd kept writing in the notebook. She was, on this Tuesday morning in March, in the bus terminal because it was one of the places she could sit for a period of time without being moved along, that had warmth and working bathrooms and the specific anonymity of a transit space where everyone was theoretically waiting for something. She saw the wallet when she sat down. Saw it lying there, splayed, with its contents showing. She counted the cash with her eyes from 3 feet away. $200 minimum. Probably more. She looked at it for a long moment. She thought about $14. She thought about the $14 very carefully, the way you think about something when you're not going to do what it argues for. She gave it its full weight. $200 was more than 2 weeks of the careful management she'd been practicing. It was food and a motel room for 2 nights and new socks and the warmth that came from security, however temporary. $200 was significant in the life she was living. She looked at the photograph behind the plastic window of the wallet. A man and a woman and 2 children, a boy of maybe 10 and a girl of maybe 7, standing in front of what looked like a beach, all of them squinting in the sun and laughing at something that had just happened outside the frame. The kind of photograph that exists because someone caught a real moment, not a posed one. She picked up the wallet. She stood up. She looked around the terminal for the person it belonged to. She found him at the coffee stand near the east entrance. He was off the phone now, standing with his coffee and his expensive shoes and his expression of someone in the middle of an invisible conversation with themselves. He was maybe 50, broad-shouldered, with the look of someone who'd once been very physically capable and had become sedentary by degrees, the softening of a former athlete. Savannah walked up to him. "Excuse me," she said. He looked at her. The quick inventory that adults did. The hoodie, the braid, the backpack. "Is this yours?" She held out the wallet. He looked at it. His hand went to his jacket pocket, the automatic motion of someone discovering an absence they didn't know was there. He patted his chest and his hip and came back to the wallet in her hand. He took it from her. Opened it. Counted something inside. "Yes," he said. "Where did you?" "It fell out of your pocket near the entrance," she said. "About 5 minutes ago. I saw you come through." He looked at her. Then at the wallet. He opened the cash section. Looked up at her. "It's all there," she said. Before he asked. Before the particular slightly insulting moment when someone who has lost something checks whether the person who found it took from it. He had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "Thank you," he said. He reached into the wallet and pulled out a $20 bill and held it out. Savannah looked at the $20. She thought about $14 and the weight of 200. "That's okay," she said. He looked at her. "Please," he said. There's a lot of cash in here. It was important that He seemed to understand that he was explaining himself to a teenager and stopped. "Take it. You did a good thing." "You don't have to pay someone for doing a good thing," Savannah said. "It just means the good thing happened. That's enough." She turned and walked back to the seat she'd been at. She picked up her backpack. The terminal was getting busier now, and she needed to think about where she was going to be at what time, the daily logistics that structured her mornings. She didn't see the man watch her go. She didn't see him stand there with the 20 in his hand and a look on his face that was difficult to describe, something between shame and recognition, the look of someone confronted with a fact about themselves that they hadn't scheduled. She was out the east doors before he found whatever he was going to do next. The man's name was Jeffrey Hartwell. He was 51 years old, and he was the kind of successful that made him comfortable in ways he'd stopped noticing. He ran a commercial real estate development company that had reshaped significant parts of the city in the past 15 years. He was on the board of 3 civic organizations. He gave to charity in the tax-efficient way of people for whom charity was partly about the giving and partly about the record of the giving. He was not a bad man. He would have been offended, and with some justification, to be called a bad man. He paid his employees fairly. He'd been faithful to his wife for 23 years. He coached his son's baseball team on Saturdays. He was also a man who had stopped seeing certain things, who moved through the city's transit spaces and its sidewalks and its public corners without registering the specific human reality of who was in them and why. Not maliciously, just from disuse. The capacity to see had atrophied from not being exercised. He stood in the bus terminal with a $20 bill in his hand, and he looked at the doors where the girl had gone. He thought about what she'd said. You don't have to pay someone for doing a good thing. It just means the good thing happened. That's enough. He thought about the wallet, $240 and 4 credit cards and his driver's license and the photograph of his family in Myrtle Beach in 2019 that his daughter had put in there because she thought he should carry a picture of them. He thought about 63 people walking past. He put the $20 bill in his pocket. He picked up his coffee. He looked at the doors. Then he sat down. He was late to a meeting. He sat down anyway. He sat in the bus terminal for 20 minutes, and he thought, which was something he hadn't done, really done, not the productive forward momentum thinking of his professional life, but the sitting with it thinking of someone confronting something, in a very long time. After 20 minutes, he got up and walked to where the girl had been sitting. She wasn't there. He stood in the spot where she'd been. He looked around the terminal. She was gone. The Meridian bus terminal was on the edge of the part of the city that people sometimes called the corridor, which was the city's polite way of naming the neighborhood that had the highest concentration of social services and the lowest concentration of investment, where the shelters were and the soup kitchens were and the particular businesses that served people who didn't have much money and needed things to still be available to them. The corridor was also where the Iron and Road Diner was. The Iron and Road had been on Meridian Avenue for 22 years. It had started as a small operation, 6 tables, a counter with stools, a kitchen that did breakfast and lunch, and had grown by the particular mechanism of being genuinely good at the thing it did. The food was real. The coffee was strong. The prices were what they had been, adjusted for inflation, for 22 years, because the owner believed that a diner on Meridian Avenue existed to serve the people of Meridian Avenue, and the people of Meridian Avenue needed prices that were possible. The owner's name was Arthur Wayne Collins. He was 57 years old. He had a gray beard and forearms like a man who'd spent his life lifting things and not stopping, and a face that had been in weather and was comfortable with it. He wore the same thing every day, jeans and a white t-shirt and, when he was out front, an apron that had been through approximately 10,000 shifts and showed it. He was the president of the Meridian chapter of the Hells Angels. He'd been in the club for 30 years. He'd also been running the diner for 22 of those years, which people sometimes found paradoxical until they spent any time with him, at which point it became clear that both things were expressions of the same fundamental belief, that communities were made of people who showed up and did the actual work, and that the actual work was feeding people and being present and not looking away. He knew the corridor the way you knew a place you'd been paying attention to for 22 years. He knew its people, not abstractly, not demographically, but specifically. He knew which shelter had a good director and which one had a director who needed watching. He knew which corner had the best visibility for someone who needed to see who was coming. He knew the library hours because he'd suggested to more than one person that the library was the best option for the particular problem they were trying to solve. He knew the faces. He didn't know Savannah's face yet, but he was going to. She came into the Iron and Road on a Wednesday. Not because she knew anything about it specifically. She'd walked past it for months, had noted the prices on the board in the window, and had not gone in because the prices, while reasonable, were still prices, and her $14 required the kind of management that didn't include sit-down meals. She came in on Wednesday because it was raining. A real March rain, the horizontal kind, and she'd been on the street for 3 hours, and she was wet in the specific complete way that happened when rain found every gap, and she was cold, and she had $12 now, and she made the calculation that warming up was a necessity that justified the expenditure. She sat at the counter. She ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a cup of soup and a roll. She kept her backpack on her lap and her eyes on the door the way she always did, the position of someone calibrating exits. She sat with the soup for a long time because the soup was hot, the counter was warm, and the rain was continuing outside. Arthur came to refill her water without being asked. He looked at her with the look he'd developed over 22 years on Meridian Avenue, not the assessing look of someone cataloging a situation, but the present look of someone who was just seeing what was there. "Are you warm enough?" he said. "Getting there," she said. He nodded. Moved on. He brought her a second roll without asking and didn't put it on the bill. She noticed. She didn't say anything. She ate it. When she went to pay, Arthur looked at the bill and then at her. $2.50, he said. The soup and roll had been listed at $4.75 on the board. She looked at him. "The roll wasn't on the menu," she said. "No," he agreed. Then, $2.50, he said again. The same tone. The tone that closed the argument with kindness rather than force. She paid $2.50. She stood up to leave. "Rain's letting up a little," Arthur said. He wasn't looking at her. He was wiping the counter. "Takes about 40 minutes. If you wanted to wait it out." She looked at the window. The rain was, marginally, letting up. She sat back down. She stayed for 40 minutes and drank the coffee that Arthur put in front of her and did not add to the bill, and while she sat, she took out her notebook and wrote, because writing was something she did in spaces that were warm enough and stable enough to allow the kind of focus it required. Arthur, passing with the coffee pot, glanced at the notebook. Not invasively, a glance, the kind you give things that catch your eye. "What are you writing?" he said. She looked up. "A story," she said. "What kind?" She thought about how to describe it. "About a city," she said. "About what a city looks like from the ground." Arthur looked at her for a moment. "From the ground," he said. "As opposed to from a building," she said. "Most stories about cities are from buildings. Or from cars. From inside things. She looked at the notebook. I'm trying to write one from the outside. He nodded slowly. You've been outside a while, he said. Not a question. She looked at him. The careful assessment she'd developed for adults who noticed things she wasn't sure she'd consented to being noticed. She found him looking back without the quality she'd learned to guard against. Not prying, not building toward something, not calculating. Just there. 8 months, she said. He nodded. He moved away with the coffee pot. He didn't push. He didn't make a thing of it. She finished her coffee. She left. She came back on Thursday. On Thursday, he knew she'd come back, the way you know things after 22 years of paying attention to a particular neighborhood. He had the soup on before she sat down. She noticed. She didn't say anything about it. She sat down and opened her notebook, and he brought the soup and refilled the coffee before it was empty, and they had, over the next hour, the second installment of a conversation that was building itself one careful exchange at a time. She told him about the notebook, about Ms. Hartley and the scholarship, about the library and which branches were open which hours, and how you built a day around public spaces that were warm and welcoming or, at minimum, tolerable. He told her about the diner, about Meridian Avenue 22 years ago, when it had been considerably rougher than it was now, the specific incremental changes of a neighborhood that had been paid attention to by people who were willing to do the actual work. He didn't ask about her family. He didn't ask about before the 8 months. He didn't produce a pamphlet for a shelter or a list of resources. She noticed this too. On Friday she came back, and he made the soup again, and this time she said, "You don't have to do this." He looked at her. "Do what?" "Feed me at a discount and pretend you're not." He almost smiled. "It's not a discount," he said. "Those are the prices. For this table, this time." "That's a definition of discount," she said. "Or a definition of my table and my time," he said. She looked at him. Why? He thought about how to answer. He set the coffee pot down and leaned on the counter. "You came in Wednesday in the rain," he said. "You ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. You kept your backpack on your lap. You watched the door." He paused. "And then you took out a notebook and started writing. While you were cold and wet and worried. You started writing." She waited. "Somebody does that," he said. "I want to know what they're writing." She looked at the notebook. "You haven't asked to read it," she said. "I'm not going to ask to read it," he said. "That's yours. I just want to be in the vicinity of someone writing something real." She looked at him. "What's your name?" she said. "Arthur," he said. "Savannah," she said. He nodded, like he was filing it carefully. "Savannah," he said. "You want another roll?" The Monday after the wallet, 6 days after the morning in the bus terminal, Jeffrey Hartwell came into the Iron and Road. He'd found the diner through the particular path that people find things when they've started paying attention. He'd been in the corridor 3 times in the past week, in ways he hadn't been before, because something had started that he hadn't known how to stop. He'd been looking. Not for Savannah specifically, though her face had stayed with him. For something he didn't have a name for yet. He'd walked past the Iron and Road on Saturday. Had looked through the window. had come in on Monday because the place looked real in the way he'd been wanting something to be. He sat at the counter. Arthur came over. "Coffee," he said. "Please," Jeffrey said. Arthur poured it and moved on. He had the particular skill of diner owners who know when someone needs a minute. Jeffrey sat with his coffee and looked at the menu and at the walls of the diner, which had the particular decoration of a place that had accumulated things over 22 years: photographs, community notices, a small corkboard with business cards and schedules, and an old map of the Corridor neighborhood with handwritten notes on it. He'd been sitting for about 10 minutes when the door opened. Savannah came in. She stopped when she saw him. A brief flash of recognition, then the recalibrated neutral face. She sat 2 stools down from him at the counter. Arthur brought the soup without being asked. Savannah opened her notebook. Jeffrey looked at her. "You were in the bus terminal last Tuesday," he said. She looked up. "Yes." "The wallet," he said. "Yes." He picked up his coffee. "I've been trying to find you," he said. "Not in a—" He stopped. "I wanted to say something I didn't say when you gave it back." She waited. "I walked past a lot of things that morning," he said. "Past you, specifically, on my way to the coffee stand. I didn't see you, not because you were invisible. Because I wasn't looking." He held his coffee with both hands. "I've been thinking about that. About looking and not seeing." She looked at him. "You found your wallet," she said. "That was the end of that." "Was it?" he said. She looked at her soup. "What did you want to say?" she said. "I wanted to say thank you," he said. "The actual thing, not the $20 version." He paused. "And I wanted to know why. Why did you give it back?" She looked up at him. Brown eyes, direct. "Because it wasn't mine," she said. "There were $240 in it," he said. "I know," she said. "And you?" "It wasn't mine," she said again. The same tone. Simple and complete, the way facts were simple and complete. Jeffrey was quiet for a moment. "Most people in your situation," he started. "You don't know my situation," she said. Not rudely, just accurately. He stopped. "Fair," he said. He was quiet for a moment. "What is your situation?" She looked at him. "The assessment." Then, "I'm 16. I'm in school. I'm homeless. I've been working on a scholarship application for 2 months." She looked at her notebook. "I write." Arthur, who had not appeared to be listening, put a second roll on the counter beside her soup without looking at either of them. Jeffrey watched this. "How long have you been coming here?" he said. "A few days," she said. He nodded, drank his coffee, looked at the map on the wall. "The Corridor," he said. "I've developed 4 properties in this neighborhood in the last 8 years." She looked at the map. "The Slade Building," she said. "The Park West condominiums. The Meridian Office Complex on 4th." She paused. "And the one they tore down to build the Dunmore Shelter, which was a mixed-use development that took away 47 beds." Jeffrey set his coffee down. He looked at her. "You know those projects," he said. "I live in this neighborhood," she said. I paid attention to what happened to it. Arthur had his back to them at the coffee machine. His posture was entirely neutral. The Dunmore shelter, Geoffrey said. 47 beds, Savannah said. The replacement facility that was supposed to be built never got funding. The people who were in the Dunmore were redistributed to other shelters that were already at capacity. She paused. That was 3 years ago. Geoffrey looked at the map. You were in middle school 3 years ago, he said. I was paying attention then too, she said. He looked at her. Why were you paying attention to shelter capacity in middle school? She looked at her soup. A long pause. My mom was in the shelter system, she said. For about a year when I was 12. We weren't together during that year, she said with a flat precision she brought to things that were painful and had been survived. I paid attention to the shelter system because when you're 12 and your mom is in it, you pay attention to everything that affects it. Geoffrey was very still. What happened to your mom? He said. Savannah looked at him. She got out, she said. She's been clean for 2 years. She's working. She has an apartment. A pause. The reason I'm not staying with her is complicated. The man she's with is... She stopped. I left before it got worse. Does she know you're... She knows I'm safe, Savannah said. I call her every Sunday. She knows I'm in school. She knows I'm working on a scholarship. Her voice was careful and controlled. She doesn't know exactly where I'm sleeping. That conversation is complicated. Geoffrey looked at his coffee. I'm sorry, he said. The 47 beds, she said. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad specifically. I'm saying it because it's a thing that happened that you were involved in and that had consequences you might not have seen from your building. He nodded slowly. From the ground, he said. She looked at him. You said that, he said. Wednesday, apparently. To Arthur. About writing from the ground instead of from a building. She looked at Arthur's back. Arthur was still operating the coffee machine. You have good hearing, she said to Arthur. It's a small diner, Arthur said, without turning around. Things began after that. Not dramatically. Not in the single-scene transformation that stories sometimes use to describe change. In the way things actually began, incrementally, one conversation at a time, one decision at a time, the accumulation of small things that together had weight. Geoffrey came back to the Iron and Road on Wednesday, and Friday, and the following Monday. He brought his laptop the second time and worked from the counter in the mornings, which was something he hadn't done, worked somewhere other than his office, in years. He drank Arthur's coffee and watched the morning come through the windows and had, in the gaps between his work, conversations with Arthur and sometimes with Savannah. The conversations with Arthur were about the corridor, about what it had been and what it was and what it could be, and the difference between those things when development was done by people looking from buildings and when it was done by people looking from the ground. Arthur had opinions, developed over 22 years of specific attention, and he expressed them with the directness of someone who had no reason to manage what he said. Geoffrey had not had conversations like this in years. He had meetings, he had many meetings, but meetings had a purpose, and the purpose structured what could be said. These conversations had no purpose except being true, And the being true was, he realized, something he'd been missing without knowing it. With Savannah, the conversations were different. She was not interested in his guilt or his realization or his process of changing. She was interested in the same things she was always interested in, specific facts about specific things, the gap between the city's narrative about itself and the city's actual reality, and the mathematics of who ended up where and why. She showed him her notebook once. Not the whole thing. 3 pages. She laid them open on the counter in the particular way of someone who has decided to take a risk and has committed to it. He read them. He read them twice. He put the pages down carefully. "How long have you been writing?" he said. "Since I was 9, she said. "My mom used to say that writing things down was the way you kept them." She was talking about bad things, writing them down so they didn't live in your body anymore. But it worked for everything. "Ms. Hartley," he said. "The teacher. She told me in October that I should apply for the Caldwell Scholarship. It's for writers under 18. $2,000 and a summer program at a university." She looked at the pages. "The application is due in 6 weeks. Have you started it?" "I've been working on the writing sample," she said. "It's the hard part. The essay about who you are, I've written 11 versions of it. The writing sample is from my notebook." She paused. "The problem is the recommendation letters. You need 3. Ms. Hartley is 1. I need 2 more. What's the criterion?" "Adults who can speak to your character and abilities. Not family." She looked at the notebook. "I don't have a lot of adults." Jeffrey looked at his coffee. "I don't know you well enough to write a recommendation letter," he said. "Not yet." She looked at him. "That's an honest answer," she said. "But I could," he said. "In 6 weeks. If I paid attention." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why would you do that?" she said. "You don't owe me anything." I returned a wallet. "That was just a thing that happened." "It wasn't just a thing that happened," he said. "Not to me." He looked at the pages of her notebook. "And this," he gestured at the writing, "this deserves to go somewhere." She looked at the notebook. "Arthur would write one," Arthur said from the end of the counter. He was wiping a glass and had, apparently, been following this conversation with his peripheral attention. Savannah looked at him. "You've known me for a week," she said. "Long enough," Arthur said. He set the glass down. He looked at her with the look he'd developed over 22 years, present, direct, without agenda. "You came in Wednesday in the rain and started writing. You told a man who was going to give you money that paying for good things defeated their purpose. You've been carrying yourself for 8 months on the strength of your own decision-making and your own sense of what's right. That's something I can speak to." Savannah looked at him. Her face did the thing it sometimes did, the slight shift of the carefully controlled composure, the edge of something larger moving behind it. "Okay," she said. "Okay." Arthur called a meeting. This was not unusual. Arthur called meetings the way he ran the diner, with efficiency and purpose, without ceremony. He sent a message to people he wanted there and gave them a time and a place, which was always the Iron and Road after closing, because the diner after closing had the particular quality of a space that was full of its own story and could hold more. He called 12 people. They came on a Thursday at 10 in the evening, after he'd cleared the last tables and put the chairs up. They brought their own coffee. He always said bring your own. His coffee was for paying customers, but there was always a pot on regardless. They settled into the space with the ease of people who had done this before. They were a cross-section of the people Arthur had been paying attention to for 22 years. A woman named Dorothy, who ran the largest food bank in the corridor and had been running it for 15 years with the specific competence of someone who had decided that competence was a moral obligation. A man named Frank, who had been a social worker for 30 years and had the gray weariness of someone who had worked against impossible caseloads for too long, and the particular unbroken quality of someone who had kept showing up anyway. A woman named Sylvia, who taught at the elementary school, and a man named Raymond, who had been, for the past decade, the most effective housing advocate in the city in the specific way of someone no one had heard of because he worked without seeking recognition. A journalist named Helen, who had covered the corridor for 20 years and had the particular quality of someone who had seen everything and had not become cynical about it, which was its own form of achievement. And 8 members of Arthur's chapter. Geoffrey was there. Arthur had called him too, with the directness he brought to everything. I'm having a meeting Thursday night about something you're now part of. 10 o'clock. Iron and Road. Geoffrey had been there at 9:55. Savannah was not there. Arthur had thought about inviting her, and had decided that this particular conversation was one where her presence would change the nature of what could be said, and what needed to be said was too important to constrain. Arthur stood at the front of the room. I'm going to tell you about a girl, he said. She's 16 years old. She's been homeless for 8 months. She's in school. She writes. She returned a wallet with $240 to the man who dropped it because it wasn't hers. He looked around the room. She told me that she's writing a story about this city from the ground. And I've read a page of it, and it is the truest thing I have read about this place in 22 years of paying attention to it. The room was quiet. I'm not here to talk about her specifically, Arthur said. I'm here to talk about what she represents. About how many Savannahs there are in this neighborhood, in this city. About what we've been doing and what we haven't been doing and what the gap between those things looks like from the ground. He looked at Geoffrey. I'm going to say something to a specific person in this room, he said. Not as an attack, as a fact. And then I want everyone to respond to the fact, not to the person. Geoffrey nodded. Slowly. The Dunmore shelter, Arthur said. 47 beds. 3 years ago. Frank, the social worker, closed his eyes briefly. Dorothy looked at her hands. Arthur looked at Geoffrey. You were a part of that. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying you were a part of a decision that had consequences you didn't see from where you were standing. Geoffrey looked at the table. I know, he said. I've known since Wednesday. Since a 16-year-old girl told you, Arthur said. Yes. That's the point, Arthur said. He addressed the room again. That's the point. The decisions that reshape this neighborhood are made by people who are not here, who are not in this diner, who do not eat soup at this counter. We have been working, all of us in this room, We have been working in the way of people who are managing a problem. What I want to talk about tonight is what it would look like to not manage the problem but to change it. Helen, the journalist, had her notebook open. "What does change look like to you?" she said. "It looks like different people making decisions," Arthur said. "Not replacing the current decision-makers. They have skills and resources that matter, but informing them with the actual lived reality of what their decisions produce." He paused. "It looks like Savannah sitting at a table with Jeffrey and not being thanked for returning a wallet, but being consulted about what the corridor needs from the next development project." Jeffrey looked up. "It looks like the writing in that notebook is being read by the right people," Arthur continued. "It looks like the Caldwell Scholarship Committee reading it. It looks like people are understanding that the most accurate account of this city exists in a 16-year-old's notebook on Meridian Avenue." Raymond, the housing advocate, said, "What specifically are you proposing, Arthur?" "Three things," Arthur said. He was always specific. 1. The scholarship. "I want this room to make sure she applies and that her application is as strong as it can be. I can write a letter. Jeffrey can write a letter if he spends the next 6 weeks actually knowing her. Ms. Sylvia can coordinate with her teacher. We make sure the writing goes where it deserves to go." "2," said Dorothy. "The Dunmore situation," Arthur said. "The 47 beds that were lost. I want to know if there's a path to replacing them. Not by fighting Jeffrey's development, that's done. By using his resources and connections to find a new path to those beds." Jeffrey was very still. "That's asking him to," Helen started. "I'm asking him to do what someone does when they've understood that they were part of a wrong thing," Arthur said. "Not to punish himself. To fix what was fixable." He looked at Jeffrey. "Is that possible?" Jeffrey thought about it. "The Park West building," he said slowly. "There's ground-floor commercial space that hasn't been leased. I bought it for retail. If the zoning—" He stopped. "I'd need to look at the numbers." "Look at them," Arthur said. "3," said Frank. "The third thing," Arthur said, "is harder to describe. It's a practice rather than a project." He looked around the room. "It's this room, this meeting, on a regular basis. People who know what this neighborhood looks like from the ground and people who have the resources to change it in the same room on a regular basis, telling each other the truth." He paused. "No agenda beyond that. No outcome specified. Just the truth, consistently, from both directions." The room was quiet for a long moment. Dorothy looked up. "You've been wanting to do this for a long time," she said. 22 years, Arthur said. "I've been waiting for the right moment." "What made this the right moment?" Arthur thought about Savannah in the rain. The notebook. The soup. You don't have to pay someone for doing a good thing. "A girl returned a wallet," he said. "And it started a conversation. And the conversation turned out to be the one I've been trying to start." Savannah finished the scholarship application on a Tuesday in April, 6 weeks after the wallet. She wrote the essay about herself in the library on a computer, version 12, which was the one that finally said what she meant. She had worked on it in fragments over 6 weeks, on the library computers, in the diner, in the notebook, And version 12 was the one where she stopped trying to make her situation acceptable and started making it true. She wrote about the notebook, about her mother, about 8 months and the specific education of living inside the city instead of in it, about the Dunmore shelter and its 47 beds, which she'd looked up in city records and which she described with the precision of someone for whom facts were the most reliable form of argument, about what it meant to pay attention to a place, to actually see it, to write from the ground. She wrote, "I am 16 years old, and I have been homeless for 8 months, and in that time I have not stopped going to school or writing in this notebook or believing that the truth about a place is worth recording even when the place is not what it should be. Especially then." She wrote, "A wallet fell on the floor of the Meridian bus terminal on a Tuesday in March. 63 people walked past it. I picked it up and gave it back. The man who owned it offered me $20. I said, 'You don't have to pay someone for doing a good thing. It just means the good thing happened. That's enough.' I want to write about a city where enough people believe that enough of the time that it changes what the city is." She printed it. She assembled the application packet. 3 recommendation letters, Ms. Hartley, Arthur, and Jeffrey. She read each letter before she included it, because they had given her the letters unsealed, each of them saying the same thing in different words. "This matters, she matters, please make space for this." She addressed the envelope. She walked to the post office on Meridian Avenue, and she mailed it. She walked back to the diner. Arthur was behind the counter. The lunch rush was just ending. She sat down. "Done," she said. He put coffee in front of her. "Good," he said. "I don't know if I'll get it," she said. "Doesn't matter right now," he said. "Right now you did the thing. The outcome is its own category." She looked at the coffee. "Arthur," she said. "Yeah." "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Why did you call the meeting?" She had found out about it. Jeffrey had told her, not the details, but the fact of it. "Why did you use me as the occasion for it?" He leaned on the counter. He thought about how to answer. 22 years ago, he said, I came to this neighborhood with a specific plan. I was going to open a diner. The club was already here. We'd been here for years, doing the work, the community work. But I wanted something more structural. Something that was here every day, that people could organize around. He looked at the counter. It took me about 3 years to understand that a diner wasn't enough. That food and warmth and a place to sit, as necessary as those things were, weren't the same as real change. She listened. "So I started paying more attention," he said, "to what was happening to the neighborhood, to the decisions being made, to who was in those decisions and who wasn't. And I kept thinking, the people who should be in those rooms aren't in those rooms. The people who know what this neighborhood actually is, who live in it and breathe it, and whose lives are shaped by every zoning decision and every shelter closure, they're not sitting at the table." "Because they're not invited," she said. "Because the table is in a different building," he said. "And it doesn't occur to the people at the table that anyone from this building would have anything to offer. Because from where they're sitting, they're looking at data, statistics, need assessments, not people." She looked at her coffee. "I write people," she said. "Yeah," he said. And that's the thing that was missing. Not the data. There's plenty of data. The specific human reality of what the data means. He looked at her. When you told me you were writing a story about the city from the ground, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while. What? That somebody was finally saying the true thing, he said. And that it needed to be heard by the right people. She was quiet. Jeffrey Hartwell, she said. He's at your meetings now. Yes. What's he doing? About the Dunmore. Arthur looked at his counter. He's looking at the Park West ground floor space. Commercial space that hasn't been leased. There might be a path to a transitional housing facility. It's complicated. Zoning, funding, operational agreements. But he's looking at it. She thought about this. If it happens, she said. If the beds come back. That's... She stopped. That's because of a wallet. No, Arthur said. It's because you made a decision about who you were. The wallet was just the context. She looked at him. You know what you did, he said. What? You showed a man who thought he knew this city that he didn't actually see it, Arthur said. You showed him, not by telling him, by being the specific, actual, true version of someone he'd been walking past without seeing. And that's different from anything I could have done in 22 years of meetings. She was quiet for a long moment. My mom used to say, she said slowly, that the thing that changed people wasn't arguments. It was encounters. A real encounter with a real person in a real moment that made abstract things specific. Your mom was right, Arthur said. She was a smart woman, Savannah said. Her voice was different on this. Careful, the way she was always careful about her mother. She had a lot of hard years. But she was always smart. You get it from her, Arthur said. She smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real, the specific smile of someone who loves a person and is glad for the resemblance. The call from the Caldwell Scholarship came in May. She was in Ms. Hartley's classroom after school, working on a reading response essay, and her phone buzzed on the desk, and she looked at it, and the area code was the one from the university, and she picked it up, and a woman's voice said her name. She got it. Not just the scholarship. The woman on the phone explained that the selection committee had been so moved by her writing sample that they were offering her an additional opportunity. A residency. 4 weeks in the summer, at the university, in the writing program. She sat in Ms. Hartley's classroom and listened and said yes and thank you and that she'd look for the paperwork and hung up. Ms. Hartley was at her desk, grading papers, pretending not to be watching. Well, she said. Savannah looked at her phone. I got it, she said. Ms. Hartley put her pen down. She looked at Savannah across the classroom. She was a woman in her 40s who had taught 11th grade English for 16 years and had seen many students and had a specific category in her memory for the ones who had moved her, and Savannah was in that category at the top. Savannah, she said. Yes. You worked for this. This is yours. Savannah nodded. She was doing the thing where she managed how much she felt because feeling too much in front of people required trust she was still building. Can I use your phone? She said. To make a call? Of course, Ms. Hartley said. Savannah called her mother. She hadn't called on a day other than Sunday in 8 months. The Sunday calls were their system. their agreed-upon proof of continued existence and relative stability. She'd maintained the system because systems were how you kept things going. She called on a Thursday in May. Her mother answered on the first ring. "Savannah." The voice, her mother's voice, which she kept in a particular safe place in her memory that she took out carefully, was full of the alarm that mothers have when the schedule changes. "I'm okay," Savannah said. "I got something I wanted to tell you." A pause. "Tell me." "The Caldwell Scholarship. $2,000 and a summer residency. For my writing." Silence. Then, "Baby." Her mother's voice was different. Stripped of the careful management both of them maintained. "Oh, Savannah, baby." "I know," Savannah said. Her voice was unsteady. She let it be. "Mom, I'm here." "I'm okay," she said. "I'm actually okay. I wanted you to know that. Not just that I'm safe. That I'm okay." Her mother was crying. She could hear it, the specific sound of her mother crying, which she kept in the safe place alongside her voice. "I know you are," her mother said. "I've been trying to. I know things are. When are you?" "Mom," Savannah said. "We'll talk Sunday. There are a lot of things to talk about. But I just needed you to know today." "I know today," her mother said. "I know today, baby." Arthur told the Thursday meeting. He told them with the specific pride that comes from watching something you believed in become real. He told them Savannah had the scholarship, that the writing was going somewhere, that one part of the thing he'd described was done. The room responded. Not with applause. That wasn't the register of these meetings, which were too grounded for performance. With the particular satisfaction of people for whom a real thing had happened. "What about the Dunmore?" Dorothy said. Jeffrey had the floor. He'd been at every Thursday meeting for 6 weeks. He came with specifics, numbers, zoning research, and conversations he'd had. He was, Savannah had noticed, a man who was better at specifics than at abstractions, who became more trustworthy the more there was something concrete to act on. "The Park West space is viable," he said. "I've spoken with the zoning board. A transitional housing facility is allowable under the current mixed-use designation with a conditional use permit. I've spoken with 3 organizations about operational partnership." He looked at Frank. The model Frank described, not a shelter, a transitional facility, case management built in, timeline-based stays, that's what the space supports. 38 beds initially, with potential expansion. 38, Frank said. Toward the 47, Jeffrey said. Not immediately, but toward it. Frank looked at his hands. He'd been in social work for 30 years. He'd seen a lot of proposed projects that didn't materialize. "What's the timeline?" he said. "Conditional use permit, 6 to 9 months. Construction, 4 to 6 months. Realistically operational in 14 to 18 months. "That's a long time," Dorothy said. "Yes," Jeffrey said. "But it's a real time. Not aspirational. A real project with a real timeline." Arthur looked at the room. "Accountability," he said. "That's what Thursday meetings are for. Jeffrey, you'll report progress every month. Real progress, not spin. If something falls through, you tell us before we hear it from somewhere else. Agreed. Agreed, Geoffrey said. Raymond, Arthur said, looking at the housing advocate, you're the check. You know how these projects live and die. You watch it. Raymond nodded. Okay, Arthur said. That's two. The third thing, he looked at the room. This room. This meeting. We've been at it 6 weeks, and I want to know if it's working. Real answer. Helen, the journalist, looked up from her notebook. I'll tell you what I see, she said. I see Geoffrey Hartwell at a table with Frank Morrison, which is a thing that would not have happened 2 months ago. I see Dorothy talking directly to a development company about the actual human consequences of land use decisions. I see Raymond having conversations about housing advocacy with someone who has the resources to make housing happen. She paused. I see this city doing something it rarely does, looking at itself from 2 directions simultaneously. Is that enough? Arthur said. It's a start, Helen said. It's a real start. Savannah came to a Thursday meeting in June. Arthur asked her, and she said yes, which was the only requirement. She walked in and found 12 people sitting in the cleared diner, and she took the empty chair they'd left for her, and she looked around the room. She recognized Geoffrey, who nodded at her. She recognized Frank from the food bank line she'd stood in twice. She didn't know most of them. Arthur said, "Tell them what you see." She looked at him. "From the ground," he said. She understood. She took out her notebook. She looked at the people in the room. "I'm going to read something," she said, "from what I've been writing. 3 pages. And then I'm going to tell you what I think this room should be trying to do." Nobody said anything. The room held itself open. She read. What she read was 3 pages from the notebook, pages she'd selected carefully. Not the hardest pages, not the ones that were most about her own experience, but the pages that were most about the city. About the specific way a neighborhood looked at 6 in the morning versus 6 in the evening. About the language that emerged from people who were trying to survive in a space that wasn't designed for them. About the Dunmore shelter, not as a data point, but as a place that had existed and then hadn't, the specific human reality of a place being there and then being gone. She read clearly and steadily. She'd read her work aloud before, in Ms. Hartley's class, and had learned that it was different from writing, that reading aloud required you to trust the work completely, to give it to a room and let the room decide. She gave it to the room. When she finished, the silence lasted for about 5 seconds. Dorothy, who had been running a food bank for 15 years and had not cried at a Thursday meeting before, looked at the table. Frank looked at the ceiling. Helen was writing. Geoffrey was looking at his hands. Arthur was looking at Savannah. "What do you think this room should do?" he said. She put down the notebook. "Keep meeting," she said. "That's the first thing. Because the thing that's been missing, from what I can see, is consistency. The decision-making and the lived reality have been in separate rooms for a long time. This room puts them together. That matters." "What else?" Dorothy said. "Tell people about it," Savannah said. "Not as a news story, though Helen can write what she thinks is worth writing. As a model. As a thing that other cities and other neighborhoods can understand and adapt." She paused. Because this isn't unique to the corridor. Every city has a gap between the people making decisions and the people living with the consequences. Every city needs a version of this. That's a large ambition, Raymond said. Yes, she said. Is it wrong? He looked at her. No, he said. It's not wrong. Third thing, Arthur said. She looked at him. The third thing is me, she said. Not me specifically, but people like me, who have been living outside the city's narrative about itself, who have been paying attention from the ground and writing it down, and who don't have a seat at the table because nobody thought to pull up the chair. She looked at Geoffrey. You pulled up a chair in a diner because a girl returned your wallet. That was an accident. I want to talk about how to make it not an accident. Geoffrey looked at her. What does that mean practically? He said. It means the scholarship is one path, she said. It means this table is another. It means the next development project in the corridor has a community input process that isn't a checkbox but an actual seat. Someone who lives in the neighborhood, who knows what it is from the inside, and who has a real voice in what it becomes. She paused. I'm not saying that as a demand. I'm saying it as a design principle. If you want to build something that doesn't repeat the Dunmore, you have to know what the Dunmore meant to the people who lost it. Not in a study, in a conversation. The room was quiet. She's right, Dorothy said. I know, Geoffrey said. You know what you're agreeing to, Arthur said to Geoffrey. It's not comfortable. It means your projects take longer and cost more because consensus takes time. I know, Geoffrey said. And the outcomes are better, Raymond said. Consistently. The data on community-engaged development is clear. I know that too, Geoffrey said. I just didn't apply it to myself. He looked at Savannah. I'd like to start applying it. Okay, she said. The summer residency was 4 weeks in July. Savannah had not been away from the city since she was 11, since a school trip that felt like a different life. She packed her backpack, the same one, the waterproof one with the notebook and the ID and the photograph, and Arthur drove her to the bus terminal. They sat in the truck outside for a moment. You'll be okay, he said. I know, she said. Call me if. I know, she said again. He looked at her. The look he'd developed was present and direct. You changed something, he said. You know that. I was part of something that changed something, she said. That's what changing things is, he said. Being part of it. She picked up her backpack. Started to open the door. Arthur, she said. Yeah. Thursday meetings, she said. While I'm gone. Every week, he said. And the Park West facility, she said. Geoffrey will report in July. He will, Arthur said. She looked at him. Take care of it while I'm gone. I've been taking care of it for 22 years, he said. I'll manage another 4 weeks. She almost smiled. She got out of the truck. She walked through the doors of the Meridian bus terminal, the same doors as the morning in March, the same building, the same floor where a wallet had fallen and 63 people had walked past and 1 person hadn't. She bought her ticket. She sat in the same general area where she'd been sitting that morning, waiting for the bus. She took out the notebook. She wrote, "I'm leaving the city for 4 weeks. The first time I've left in 5 years. The last time I was 11 years old, and I still believed that the world was mostly what it showed you on the surface. I know better now. I also know that knowing better doesn't mean worse. It means more specific. It means you have to look harder, and the looking is worth it. I'm going to a university to learn about writing, which is something I've been doing for 7 years in a notebook on Meridian Avenue. What I know about writing is this. It is the practice of looking at something until you see what's actually there and then finding the words that make someone else see it too. I have been looking at this city for 8 months from the ground, and I have seen things that buildings don't see. I'm going to go learn how to say them better. When I come back, there will be a table to sit at. That is something." The bus pulled in. She put the notebook in the backpack. She picked it up. She stood up. She walked to the bus. Outside the terminal, on Grand Avenue, the city was doing what it did. The particular morning noise and motion of people and vehicles, and the air that smelled like coffee and exhaust, and the specific March smell that had become, over 8 months, the smell of something she understood from the inside. She got on the bus. She came back in August. The city was the same and different in the way that cities were when you'd been away and then come back, recognizable in its bones and slightly altered in its surface, the specific alterations that were invisible unless you'd been paying the kind of attention she paid. Arthur picked her up. He looked at her when she got in the truck. She looked different and didn't. She'd been at a university for 4 weeks, which was the most consistent physical stability she'd had in over a year, and something in her posture had shifted, not less watchful, but more grounded, the watchfulness of someone who trusted their own foundation. "How was it?" he said. "Good," she said. "Complicated in good ways." She looked out the window. There were 22 young writers in the program. Most of them had had lives that were easier than mine. Different. Not better necessarily. Just with more floor under them. She paused. It was interesting to write beside people who had different floors. My writing came out differently there. How? She thought about it. More confident, she said. Less defensive. Because I wasn't writing to prove something was real. I was just writing. She looked at the city coming back around her. I want to write like that here. Arthur nodded. The Park West facility, she said. The conditional use permit was approved last week, he said. Construction starts in October. She was quiet for a moment. 38 beds, she said. 38, he said. In phase 1. My mom, she said. He looked at her. I called her from the residency, she said. We talked for 2 hours. The longest conversation we've had in a year. She looked at the window. I'm going to see her this week. We're going to figure out the living situation. Not immediately. But the conversation is happening. Good, he said. I can't promise it'll be. I know, he said. I don't know what it'll look like. That's okay, he said. The conversation is the thing. The rest figures itself out. She looked at Meridian Avenue as they turned onto it. The diner was visible ahead. The sign, the window with the prices board, the particular building that had been there for 22 years and had become, over the past months, the specific place she meant when she thought about the word stability. "Arthur," she said. "Yeah." "I want to keep writing about the city," she said. "From the ground. But I want it to go somewhere. The way the residency faculty talked about it, the way they talked about what the work could do, I want to find a way to make it do that here. Not just a scholarship essay or a notebook. A real thing." He parked the truck. "What kind of real thing?" She thought about it. "A column," she said. "In a real publication. Helen's paper or somewhere. A regular thing. From the ground. About what this city looks like from Meridian Avenue." He looked at her. "You should call Helen," he said. "I'm going to," she said. "And the Thursday meeting," he said. "This Thursday." "I'll be there," she said. She picked up her backpack. She opened the truck door. "Hey," Arthur said. She looked back. "Welcome home," he said. She looked at the diner. At the street. At the city she'd been writing for 8 months. "Thank you," she said. "For the soup." He made a sound that was close to a laugh. "It was just soup," he said. "It was not just soup," she said. The same words she'd said to Jeffrey, the same register. "Nothing that happens in this particular diner is just anything." She got out. She walked to the front door of the Iron and Road. She pushed it open. Inside, the morning was happening. Georgie at the counter, 2 men at the back table, the smell of coffee, and the particular warmth of a space that had been used consistently for good purposes for 22 years and carried the evidence of that in its air. She sat at the counter. Arthur came in behind her and went to the coffee machine. He put a cup in front of her. She opened her notebook. She wrote, "I came back to the city on an August morning and walked into the diner on Meridian Avenue, and the city smelled like itself, which is a complicated smell that I've been trying to describe for 8 months and haven't gotten exactly right yet. I'm going to keep trying. That's what writing is, the perpetual attempt to get the thing exactly right, knowing you probably won't and doing it anyway because the trying produces something that wasn't there before. 8 months ago I was 16 years old and homeless, and I picked up a wallet from the floor of a bus terminal because it wasn't mine, and I gave it back. 63 people walked past it first. I've been trying to understand that number for 5 months. Why 63? What they saw and decided not to see. I think I understand now. I think 63 people walked past because walking past is the path of least resistance, and most of the time we take the path of least resistance because nothing has happened yet to convince us that the detour is worth it. Nothing has made the abstract specific. I picked up the wallet because when I looked at it, I saw the photograph. The family at the beach. I made it specific. And once it was specific, walking past wasn't possible. That's the thing I want to do with this city. Make it specific. Make the abstract human. Make the data into people, the statistics into stories, and the policy into the actual lived morning of someone on Meridian Avenue trying to figure out where the warmth is. The city is complicated and flawed and not what it should be. It is also, from where I'm sitting, full of people who are paying attention and showing up and making things out of whatever they have. I'm going to write about them. I'm going to start now. She turned the page. She wrote. 6 months later, the Thursday meetings had grown to 18 regular attendees. The column Helen had helped her place, Ground Level, by Savannah Tulane, ran every other week in the city paper and had developed, in the particular way of things that said true things, a readership that went beyond the corridor. People who didn't live on Meridian Avenue were reading about what it looked like. People in buildings were learning what it looked like from the ground. The Park West facility was under construction. 42 beds now. They'd found the additional 4 in the revised plans. Frank had 3 organizations in conversation about the operational model. Raymond had the permitting calendar on the wall of his office with every deadline in red. Savannah had moved in with her mother in October. This was not simple. The man who had been the reason she left was gone. He had left in September, under pressure from circumstances that her mother described as finally intolerable, which Savannah received without the anger she'd expected and with a relief that surprised her. The apartment was small, and there were 2 years of distance between them and a complexity of things to say that would take longer than October to say. But she was there. They were in the same space. Her mother cooked on Sundays. Real cooking, the kind her mother did when she was functioning fully, which was the thing that required holding carefully so as not to squeeze the goodness out of it by gripping too hard. Savannah still went to the diner every morning. She still sat at the counter. Arthur still put coffee in front of her before she asked. They still talked about the neighborhood and the meetings and the column and the facility and the specific daily work of paying attention to a place and acting on what you found. One morning in January, Jeffrey came in. He came in the way he comes in now, without the expensive shoe posture, without the forward lean urgency, and without the phone at his ear. He sat at the counter, and Arthur poured him coffee, and he looked at the map on the wall, the one with the handwritten notes, which had more notes on it now, denser with the accumulated knowledge of 8 months of Thursday meetings. "I got a letter," he said. Savannah looked at him. "From the Caldwell Foundation," he said. He looked at her. "They're starting a community engagement program, modeled on the Thursday meetings. They read your essay, the one from the scholarship application. They read your column. They want to pilot the model in 3 other cities." Savannah was quiet. "Our model," Arthur said. He was wiping the counter. "The Thursday meeting model," Jeffrey said. Which means Savannah's idea about making it replicable," Arthur said. Savannah looked at the counter. "When?" she said. "They want to start the piloting process in the spring," Jeffrey said. "They're asking if you'd be willing to be part of the design. What it looks like. How you structure the room." She thought about what she'd said at the first meeting she'd attended. "I want to talk about how to make it not an accident." "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'd be willing." Jeffrey nodded. He looked at his coffee. Looked at the map. "Savannah," he said. She looked at him. "I want to say something," he said. "I've been trying to find the right way to say it for months." "Say it the wrong way," she said. "That's usually more honest." He looked at her. Almost smiled. "You returned my wallet," he said. "In the bus terminal. And you told me you didn't need to be paid for doing a good thing. And I've been thinking about that every day since March." He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. "I think the reason it stays with me is that it was such a small thing. The act. And it had such—" He shook his head. "I changed a neighborhood and didn't see the people in it. And then a girl picked up my wallet and said something that cost her nothing and gave her nothing except the knowledge that the thing had been right, and it—" He stopped. "It made it specific," Savannah said. He looked at her. "You were abstract to me," she said. "Before March. You were a development company. You were a decision. You were the Dunmore. And then you were a person dropping his wallet, and the photograph of your family was there, and you became specific." She paused. "And then I became specific to you. And once something is specific, walking past isn't possible." He looked at her. "Where does it go?" he said. "This." He gestured at the room, at the map, at the Thursday meeting, at the facility under construction, at the column, and at the conversation they were having. "Where does it go from here?" Arthur looked up from the counter. Savannah thought about the column, about the 18 people at the Thursday table, about the 42 beds going up on Park West, about her mother cooking on Sundays, about the notebook that was almost full. "Forward," she said. She picked up her coffee. She looked at the map with its handwritten notes. She thought about a wallet on a floor, about 63 people walking past, about the specific thing that made the 64th stop. She thought about what it cost to stop. Nothing. The price of stopping was nothing. The price of seeing something and deciding it was yours to respond to was nothing except the decision itself. She opened her notebook. She wrote the first line of the next column. "The city changes one specific morning at a time, one person deciding to stop instead of walking past, the small ordinary decision that looks like nothing and is everything." Arthur put another cup of coffee on the counter beside her. She kept writing. Outside on Meridian Avenue, the city was doing what cities did. The particular morning motion of people and light and weather and the accumulated story of a place that had been here long before any of them and would be hereafter, carrying in its streets and buildings and air the record of every decision that had ever been made in it, every person who had walked through it, every morning that had happened here, every wallet that had fallen, every person who had stopped.